The air inside the Whitmore Mansion gallery shimmered with wealth and whispered envy. Crystal chandeliers scattered gold light across a sea of gowns and tuxedos as guests sipped champagne and pretended they understood Monet. Waiters glided by with silver trays, and a string quartet softened every awkward silence. In the middle of it all stood a 12-year-old girl in a faded sweater and second-hand shoes, Zara Williams, the maid's daughter. Her mother, Marie, polished silver in the corner, invisible to the rich. Zara, however, wasn't looking at people. She was staring at the new masterpiece on display, a Monet valued at $12 million. She studied its every brushstroke, her brow furrowed. And then, before she could stop herself, the words burst out of her mouth in perfect French. "Ce tableau est un faux," she cried. "That painting is a fake." The sound sliced through the room like glass shattering. Guests turned, frozen mid-conversation. Mrs. Victoria Peton, one of the wealthiest patrons there, glared at the child as if she were filth on marble. "What is this little brat doing near my painting?" she barked. "Get her away before she damages something valuable." Marie rushed forward, her face drained of color. "I'm so sorry, madam." "Zara, apologize." But Zara stood her ground. "It's not real," she said softly, still in French. "The brushwork is hesitant, and Monet never signed his water lilies on the right." The room erupted with murmurs. Dr. Catherine Whitmore, the mansion's owner and a respected art scholar, stepped closer, intrigued. She had privately doubted this painting's authenticity for weeks, but never expected a child to voice it out loud. "What did you just say?" she asked gently. Zara hesitated, then spoke again, first in French, then in clear English. "The paint has titanium white mixed in. That wasn't available in 1894. And the canvas texture, it's machine-prepared, not hand-prepared like artists used back then." Gasps rippled through the room. Some guests laughed dismissively. "Impossible," Mrs. Peton scoffed. "What could a servant's child know about French Impressionism?" Dr. Whitmore raised a hand for silence. "Continue," she said quietly. Zara pointed at the bottom corner of the canvas. "He always signed on the left. The way the pigments layer here, see? That's from modern synthetic binders." Dr. Whitmore froze. Those were the same suspicions she had secretly documented but never confirmed. "Where did you learn all this?" she whispered. Zara swallowed hard. "From your library, ma'am. I read when Mama cleans. I wanted to understand the art. I taught myself French, Italian, and Spanish so I could read the books in their original languages." The room fell utterly silent. Guests stared, caught between disbelief and awe. Mrs. Peton huffed and turned away, but Dr. Whitmore's expression softened into something close to wonder. "Come with me," she said, taking Zara's hand. Marie tried to protest, but the woman's calm authority stopped her. They walked together through tall doors into the mansion's private library, its shelves lined with leather-bound art volumes. "Show me what you know," Dr. Whitmore said, sliding a massive art book toward the girl. Zara flipped it open to a Caravaggio piece. "This was painted in Naples after his exile," she said in Italian. "You can tell by the darker palette and frantic energy." Then she turned to a Picasso. "Blue period, 1903, she murmured in Spanish. "Painted after his friend Carlos Casagemas died. That's why the sadness feels heavy in the posture." Dr. Whitmore's pulse quickened. The child wasn't guessing, she was analyzing. In each painting, Zara saw not only color but history, emotion, truth. After several long moments, Dr. Whitmore exhaled. "You noticed what even professionals missed. You may have just saved this gallery from a scandal." Zara looked up, eyes wide. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," Dr. Whitmore said softly. "You did something extraordinary." Outside, the music had resumed, but in that quiet room, a new story began, of a maid's daughter who refused to stay invisible, and a woman who decided to see her. Respect is not a privilege. It's the lens that reveals hidden brilliance. The next morning, the Whitmore Mansion's conservation lab glowed like a cathedral of science. Rows of microscopes, ultraviolet lamps, and gleaming instruments that whispered of secrets only light could reveal. Behind sealed glass, the contested Monet rested under sterile bulbs, no longer admired as art, but examined as evidence. Zara stood beside her mother, who twisted her apron nervously. Across the room, professionals in crisp lab coats unpacked equipment worth more than Marie's yearly salary. They were the museum's official authentication team, led by the formidable Dr. Rebecca Carter, a woman known for treating facts like commandments. "So," Dr. Carter said, arching a brow, "this is the child who claims to have discovered a forgery?" Her tone hung in the air, sharp and brittle. Zara's heart pounded. She clutched her notebook but stood straight. "Yes, ma'am," she said softly. Dr. Carter gave a thin smile. "How charming. And where did you study, miss?" "Williams," Dr. Whitmore interjected firmly. "She's self-taught. Her findings deserve review." One of the assistants muttered, "Self-taught? From where, YouTube?" Laughter followed. Marie flinched, but Zara didn't. She took a slow breath and stepped closer to the table. "The inconsistencies are here," she said, her voice trembling only slightly. "In the brush pressure and pigment composition." The room stilled. Even Dr. Carter's curiosity overcame her skepticism. "Show me." Under the harsh, clinical lights, Zara moved like someone used to being careful. She adjusted the raking lamp, tilted the magnifier, and pointed with quiet authority. "See this hesitation mark?" Monet's strokes were fluid, confident. "These are cautious, mechanical. And the white." She flicked the UV switch. The paint glowed with a brightness that didn't belong to the 19th century. "Titanium white," Zara explained. "Commercially available only after 1916. A murmur rippled through the experts. Dr. Martinez, the pigment analyst, leaned in, frowning. "That shouldn't be possible." Zara continued. "The canvas texture too. It's too even. Machine prepared. In Monet's time, canvases were hand-primed with natural imperfections." Dr. Carter's arms crossed tighter. "Coincidence," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Restoration materials, perhaps." Zara met her gaze evenly. "Then the restoration would sit on top of the original paint layers. But this pigment is mixed into the foundation. It's not repair, it's fabrication." Silence. The only sound was the low hum of the spectrometer warming up. Dr. Whitmore smiled faintly, pride hidden beneath professionalism. "Proceed with verification," she ordered. "If Miss Williams is wrong, the data will show it." For the next 2 hours, the lab was a flurry of testing, microscopic sampling, spectroscopy, and X-ray fluorescence scans. Zara watched each step, her small hands gripping the table as images appeared on screens. Cross-sections of paint layers, digital fingerprints of deceit. Then came the proof. The X-ray revealed a faint modern sketch beneath the lilies, the ghost of another painting, one known to have sold at auction only years ago. Every scientific reading supported the child's analysis. The Monet was a forgery, expertly crafted, but fake nonetheless. Dr. Carter's face paled. "Unbelievable," she whispered. "She's right." Zara exhaled shakily. Marie covered her mouth to keep from crying aloud. Dr. Whitmore turned to the girl, her expression soft but steady. "You understand what this means, don't you? You may have uncovered one of the biggest art frauds in recent history." Zara hesitated. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "Trouble?" Dr. Whitmore smiled. "You just saved this museum." Zara blinked, the weight of disbelief heavier than pride. "But I'm just a maid's daughter." "No," Dr. Whitmore said, her voice fierce now. "You're the best mind in this room, and it's time people started acting like it." Across the lab, even Dr. Carter bowed her head slightly, humbled by evidence and courage alike. What began as doubt ended with reluctant awe. The experts who had dismissed the girl now asked her questions. They were not talking to her anymore, they were talking with her. By evening, the forgery was officially confirmed, catalogued, and sealed for investigation. Zara's notes, written in careful blue ink, were added to the museum's archives beside the official report. A new line of authorship appeared on the document. Preliminary findings by Zara Williams. And as she left the lab that night, the girl who had once been told to keep quiet realized something powerful. The world listens when truth refuses to whisper. When knowledge speaks with courage, even the proudest voices fall silent. The Whitmore Foundation boardroom gleamed with polished wood and polished people. 12 directors, each more skeptical than the last, sat beneath a portrait of the museum's founder as if his painted eyes might approve or condemn what they were about to hear. In front of them stood Dr. Catherine Whitmore, steady as a marble column, holding a folder of evidence that had shaken the entire art world. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we nearly lost $12 million, and our reputation, because we ignored a voice we didn't expect to matter. The directors exchanged uneasy glances. "You're referring," said Chairman Harrison, "to that child? The maid's daughter? Her name," Dr. Whitmore said sharply, "is Zara Williams. And yes, I am referring to her." Gasps rustled across the table. Mrs. Foster, head of the Education Committee, adjusted her pearls. "This is absurd. A 12-year-old? Without credentials? Catherine, you can't expect us to base institutional policy on a maid's child." Dr. Whitmore placed photos of the analyzed painting before them. UV scans glowing with proof of forgery, pigment charts, Zara's neat handwriting annotating each discovery. "We already did. Her findings saved us from a global scandal." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. One director tried to laugh it off. "Coincidence," he said weakly. She guessed. Dr. Whitmore slid the official report across the table, stamped and signed by Dr. Rebecca Carter herself, the very expert who had once mocked the idea of taking a child seriously. "You'll see Dr. Carter's conclusion," Whitmore said evenly. Quote, "Preliminary analysis by Zara Williams was more thorough than any graduate-level assessment I've reviewed." The board murmured. Chair Harrison leaned back. "So what do you propose we do with this prodigy?" "I propose we give her what talent deserves, recognition." Dr. Whitmore's eyes swept the room. "A full educational scholarship, mentorship within the foundation, and official consulting status. She has earned access to the very resources she taught herself from the shadows." Mrs. Foster's voice quivered with disbelief. "You'd give a servant's child a consulting role? What will donors say?" Dr. Whitmore met her gaze with quiet fire. "If our donors fear talent, we need better donors." A ripple of whispered dissent followed, but no one dared interrupt again. Dr. Whitmore gestured toward the documents, each marked with forensic evidence of Zara's brilliance. "This girl has been studying in our library since she could read. She's fluent in 5 languages. She identified a forgery every expert missed. She deserves not charity, but opportunity." The room wavered between pride and prejudice. Chairman Harrison finally cleared his throat. "Let's vote." 12 hands rose, 7 in favor, 5 opposed. It passed. Later that afternoon, in the soft lamplight of the private library, Zara and her mother stood before Dr. Whitmore's desk. The curator reached into a drawer and held out a small brass key on a satin ribbon. "This," she said, pressing it into Zara's trembling hand, "opens the mansion's private archive. From now on, you study here as an invited scholar, not a trespasser. Knowledge is your right, not your secret." Tears filled Marie's eyes. "Ma'am, I don't know how to thank you." Dr. Whitmore smiled gently. "You already did, by raising her." Zara turned the key over in her palm, its weight grounding her in a moment too big to grasp. "I'll work hard," she whispered. "I promise." "I know you will," said Dr. Whitmore. "But don't forget, use this key to open doors for others, too." That night, in the staff lounge, the news spread like sunlight through dust. The security guard confessed he wrote poetry in his logbook. The gardener shared his sketches of rare flowers. The cook admitted he'd been studying French recipes on his phone after shifts. Zara listened to each of them, nodding. "You should show people," she said. "They need to see what I see." In a single evening, respect began to ripple through the halls that once silenced it. For the first time, the servants of Whitmore Mansion didn't just clean history, they began to make it. When one locked door opens, others remember they were never meant to stay closed. 2 weeks later, the Whitmore Mansion buzzed again, not with art lovers this time, but with investigators, journalists, and quiet tension. The Monet scandal, as the press had begun calling it, had exploded across headlines. Experts whispered that the forgery's craftsmanship was so precise that even seasoned curators had missed it. Only one person hadn't, a maid's daughter with eyes trained by passion rather than prestige. At the center of the chaos stood Antoine Dubois, an elegant man with silvered hair and arrogance polished to perfection. The notorious French art dealer, dressed in a tailored navy suit, walked into the Whitmore Gallery surrounded by lawyers and assistants who smelled of money and fear. He smiled for the cameras with the ease of a man who'd faked sincerity for decades. "This is a misunderstanding," Dubois declared, his accent rolling like silk. "My reputation in the art world is impeccable. These allegations are, how you say, laughable." Across the room, Zara sat beside Dr. Whitmore, her mother nervously twisting her hands in her lap. Zara's badge now read Consulting Specialist, though the title did little to shield her from the skeptical stares of Dubois's entourage. When he saw her, Dubois chuckled cruelly. "And who is this?" he sneered. "The museum's mascot? Surely this child isn't part of an official investigation." "She's not a mascot," Dr. Whitmore said evenly. "She's the one who uncovered your forgery." The words hit him like a slap. "Ridiculous," Dubois scoffed, switching to French for the benefit of his lawyers. "What could a servant's child possibly know of Monet's genius? Americans will believe anything." Zara sat still, understanding every word but saying nothing, for now. FBI agent Sarah Thompson, calm and precise, began her questioning. "Mr. Dubois, can you explain the chemical inconsistencies found in the painting's pigments?" Dubois smiled coolly. "Ah, chemical inconsistencies. How amusing. Perhaps the restorers used modern varnish. Happens all the time." Agent Thompson nodded slowly. "And what about the machine-prepared canvas? The titanium white? The modern binder?" "Speculation." Dubois waved a dismissive hand. "You have no proof." But his confidence cracked when Agent Thompson placed several photos on the table. Dozens of paintings from Europe and Asia, all linked by identical forgery markers. Each traced back to Dubois's sales network. Dubois's jaw twitched. He leaned toward his assistant, whispering rapidly in French, unaware or unwilling to believe that anyone else could understand him. "These fools," he hissed, his tone dripping with contempt. "They have no idea how deep this goes. Our network in Milan is untouchable. And that little black girl, she's a puppet. She probably can't even spell Monet." Zara froze, her breath sharp in her chest. Every word landed like a spark on dry wood. Across the table, Agent Thompson kept her expression blank, quietly turning on a recorder. Dubois kept talking. "Make sure the shipments from Rome stay hidden. The forger in Naples must destroy his tools. They won't find a thing." The room had gone silent except for his arrogant whispering. Then Zara stood. "Monsieur Dubois," she said in perfect Parisian French, her voice clear as crystal. "I understood every word you just said. And so did everyone else in this room." Dubois's face drained of color. "You what? You spoke of your Milan operation, your forger in Naples, your shipments from Rome." She switched seamlessly into Italian. "Il prouve sono qua. The evidence is right here." His assistant's hands shook. Agent Thompson smiled for the first time. "Thank you, Miss Williams. That will be more than enough for our transcript." Dubois's composure shattered. "You can't use this. She's a child. She's an expert," Dr. Whitmore said coldly. "And your arrogance just confessed for you." Within hours, the FBI connected the dots Zara had exposed. Raids were launched in Italy, France, and the UK. Dozens of fake masterpieces were seized. The global forgery ring Dubois led for decades crumbled overnight, all because he underestimated a girl who dared to speak. As he was led away in handcuffs, Dubois turned to Zara, his pride flickering like a dying flame. "A child destroyed everything I built." Zara looked him in the eye. "No," she said softly. "Your arrogance did." Outside, cameras flashed. The story spread like wildfire. The maid's daughter who exposed a global art fraud. But for Zara, the victory wasn't about fame. It was about justice, the kind that arrives instantly, when truth finally demands to be heard. Arrogance may paint its lies in gold, but truth always signs its name at the end. The Whitmore mansion had never seen so many cameras. Satellite vans lined the streets. Microphones jutted like flowers in spring, and the marble steps that once barred the port now hosted reporters from every major network in the world. Inside, the grand gallery shimmered, not with arrogance this time, but with anticipation. The young girl who had exposed an international forgery ring was about to speak. Dr. Catherine Whitmore stood at the podium first, composed and proud. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," she began, her voice echoing beneath the chandeliers. "We stand here today because truth found its voice in the most unexpected place. The person who saved the art world from one of its greatest scandals is not a professor, not a curator, but a 12-year-old girl named Zara Williams." The crowd erupted in flashes and applause as Zara stepped forward in a navy blazer with her new consulting specialist badge pinned over her heart. Gone was the timid child who had once whispered her observations in fear. Her eyes, steady and wise beyond her years, scanned the room full of cameras and microphones. She took a deep breath, then spoke with quiet confidence. "I didn't mean to start a scandal," she began. "I only wanted the truth to be seen. My mother always told me that knowledge is something no one can take away from you. So I learned, in every way I could. I studied in corners while she cleaned. I read when the world wasn't looking. And I learned to see what others ignored." A BBC reporter raised a hand. "Zara, how did you manage to teach yourself languages and art history so young?" She smiled. "I used free library books, borrowed audio lessons, and watched lectures online. I didn't have money, but I had time, and I didn't waste it." Her answer went viral within hours. Cameras captured her humility, her grace, and her intelligence as she explained how her passion had led her to uncover the fraud that experts had missed. She answered questions in French, Italian, and Spanish, effortlessly translating complex ideas about pigment chemistry and artistic technique. Each time she switched languages, the audience gasped softly in admiration. Then, the room went still as a familiar face stepped forward from the crowd. Mrs. Victoria Peton, the socialite who had once humiliated Zara in this very room. Her usual arrogance was gone. Her hands trembled as she approached the podium. "I need to say something," she began, her voice cracking under the weight of regret. "A few weeks ago, I said cruel and unforgivable things to this child. I judged her because of her background, her age, and her mother's uniform. I was wrong. I was blinded by pride." Zara watched silently as the woman's apology spilled into the microphones, sincere and raw. "I want to apologize not only to Zara," Mrs. Peton continued, "but to every person I've ever looked down upon. You showed the world that greatness was no label. I am deeply sorry." The audience held its breath. Cameras waited for Zara's response. The young girl stepped closer, her tone gentle but resolute. "I accept your apology," she said softly. "But instead of just saying sorry, please help others like me. Fund education for children who can't afford it. That's how we change things." The room erupted into applause so loud it shook the chandeliers. In that single moment, the maid's daughter taught the world what true dignity looked like. Dr. Whitmore returned to the podium and announced a groundbreaking initiative. "Effective immediately," she declared, "the Whitmore Foundation will sponsor full scholarships for underprivileged youth with exceptional curiosity and talent. We're also launching a mentorship program, Talent Has No Uniform, inspired by Zara's story." Reporters cheered. The hashtag talent has no uniform began trending globally within minutes. Across social media, people shared their own stories, of janitors who wrote poetry, of waitresses who painted masterpieces, of students denied chances because of where they came from. Zara's courage had sparked a movement. As the press conference ended, Dr. Whitmore presented Zara with a rare, first-edition art history book, the same kind she had once read secretly in the mansion's library. Inside the cover, an inscription read, "To a true expert and my colleague, Zara Williams. Thank you for seeing what others could not." Tears shimmered in Zara's eyes as she clutched the book. Somewhere behind the cameras, Marie stood silently, her face glowing with pride. The woman who had once mopped marble floors now watched her daughter rewrite history. That night, as news anchors across the world told her story, one truth echoed louder than any headline. You can't silence brilliance just because it doesn't come in designer shoes. Respect isn't given to titles. It's earned by truth, courage, and the heart that refuses to stay unseen. 6 months later, the Whitmore mansion looked and felt entirely different. The grand corridors that once echoed with quiet footsteps of servants now buzzed with laughter, lessons, and possibility. The same gallery where Zara had once been humiliated had become her classroom, her stage, and her proof that talent could bloom anywhere. Every weekend, buses arrived filled with students from public schools, community centers, and foster programs. They came not to clean or observe, but to learn, because of her. The Whitmore Foundation's new scholarship, Talent Has No Uniform, had already changed hundreds of lives, and it all began with a girl who refused to stay silent. Zara's life had transformed beyond anything she had imagined. By day, she studied art history with private tutors provided by the foundation. By evening, she served as a consultant for international museums, her analyses respected by experts twice her age. Her research papers on pigment composition and forgery detection were being cited by universities. She'd even spoken at the Louvre, her words translated into 5 languages, though, as many learned, she didn't need a translator. But despite all the fame, Zara never left her roots behind. Every night, she still ate dinner with her mother, Marie, in their modest home, the brass library key hanging proudly on the wall. "Mama," she said one evening, stirring her tea, "do you realize this key isn't just for me anymore? It's for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong." Marie smiled through tears. "You've turned your voice into a door, baby, and now the world's walking through it." The ripple effect of her courage stretched across continents. Museums around the world began reevaluating their hiring practices. Universities created new admissions paths for self-taught geniuses. A janitor in London who spent years sketching in secret was offered his first gallery show. A young girl in Mumbai, inspired by Zara's story, began teaching herself chemistry from borrowed textbooks. The message was clear and universal. Brilliance doesn't require permission. It only needs recognition. The Whitmore staff, once silent observers, were now creators in their own right. James, the security guard, published his first book of poetry. The gardener launched a weekend course on botanical art. The mansion kitchen hosted cooking classes in 3 languages. Everyone had discovered something within themselves worth sharing. And it started with one child who dared to be heard. One afternoon, Zara stood alone in the gallery that had changed her life. The Monet forgery, now authenticated as a fake, was framed behind glass, displayed beside the true story of how it was exposed. Beneath it, a brass plaque read, "This forgery was discovered by Zara Williams, age 12. Proof that truth and genius are not defined by status, but by courage." As she read those words, a group of visiting students gathered around her. "Miss Zara," one of them asked shyly, "how did you know to speak up that day, even when everyone laughed at you?" Zara smiled, remembering the fear that once burned in her chest. "Because silence would have hurt more," she said softly. "When you see something wrong and you know the truth, your voice becomes the brush that paints justice." Later that evening, as golden light poured through the tall windows, Zara recorded a short video for her foundation's social page. Her voice was calm but powerful. "To anyone watching," she said, "don't wait for permission to prove who you are. Speak, create, learn, be seen. You don't need to look like greatness to be great." The video went viral overnight, reaching millions across the globe. Teachers played it in classrooms, parents shared it with their children, and companies quoted her in diversity campaigns. Zara had become more than a prodigy. She had become a symbol of what happens when unseen people are finally allowed to shine. That night, as the city lights glowed outside her window, Zara closed her eyes and whispered a promise to herself. "I'll never stop learning. I'll never stop listening." Because the story of the Maid's daughter wasn't about revenge or recognition. It was about the quiet revolution that begins when one underestimated person decides to stand tall. And somewhere in the world, another child looked up from a borrowed book, eyes burning with the same fire, whispering, "Maybe I can, too." Brilliance doesn't ask for permission. It only waits for someone brave enough to see it.